Why is Chardonnay the one grape that is equally made in the vineyards and in the winery? What's the difference between biodynamic and regenerative farming? And what does it mean to be part of a family brand of wine? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in part 2 of our chat with Chris Benziger. You don't need to have listened to part 1 from last week first, but if you missed it, go back and have a listen after you finish this one. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover how the Benziger family's Flaming Hoops program ensures that family members are contributors if they work at the winery. Think no Nepo babies. How the 2017 Sonoma County wildfires impacted the Benziger Family Winery and Chris Benziger himself. The up-and-coming California appellation that should be on your radar. What makes the Benziger Running Wild Chardonnay unique? And the fascinating story behind the Benziger Tribute Cabernet. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 321. Last week, I promised to share more of my favorite low and no alcohol wines with you, as well as those that are low in sugar. So here are more of the wines that I featured on various television shows recently, starting with Pure Vision Shiraz from Australia. It's a smooth, full-bodied, de-alcoholized wine. The bonus is that this Pure Vision wine is also organic. It has seductive aromas of ripe dark berry fruit that would be perfect with a juicy steak. It's also available from several online retailers, including psalcoholfree.com. Noseko de-alkalized sparkling wine from France is made from 90% Muscat and 10% Chardonnay grapes. It offers beautiful aromas of ripe peach and pear. Their rosé sparkling offers lovely notes of field strawberries. I'd pair these bubblies with a zesty, citrus-glazed grilled shrimp skewer drizzled with fresh herbs and a hint of chili, served on a bed of warm quinoa piaf studded with roasted pine nuts. The zesty Tria Sauvignon Blanc has only 3.4 grams of sugar per liter. Wines under 5 grams per liter are considered extra dry. In liquor stores, you'll see the XD on the shelf card with information about the wine. The range goes all the way up to sweet, or S, with 45 grams of sugar per liter or more. The Tria Sauvignon Blanc will wake up your senses with juicy citrus aromas and flavors. It's perfect for seafood or field greens. I also recommend the Bottega Prosecco Rosé from Veneto, Italy. This sparkling wine offers lovely aromas of fresh field strawberries and watermelon. Even in the middle of winter, you'll be transported to a summer's day picnic. This is also a gorgeous gift wine. The bottle is beautiful. The bonus is that the wine only has 11.5% alcohol as compared to most table wines that clock in at about 13 to 14%. Some wines from warmer climates can even reach 16 to 17%. They also have what I call baby Bottega 200 ml size, which is perfect when you want just one glass of wine rather than opening a full bottle. I'd pair this Prosecco with a delicate pan-seared herb-crusted halibut, served with steamed asparagus tips and a light lemon caper sauce that enhances the wine's crisp acidity. Cave Spring Riesling from Niagara, Ontario is another great choice, as this grape is naturally low in alcohol and thrives in a cool climate like Canada. I'd pair this with a Mediterranean-inspired grilled vegetable and quinoa bowl topped with crumbled feta, fresh mint, and a light lemony vinaigrette that makes every bite sing with flavor. The size of the pour matters as much as the sugar, alcohol, and caloric content. We need to rethink those fishbowl-sized glasses that can actually hold an entire bottle of wine. And then when you're done, yes, you can use them for a steam facial. Not really, but it seems that way. That's why I love the half-bottle size of the Wayne Gretzky Cabernet Merlot. It's just 375 ml, so it has roughly 2.5 glasses of wine. That's perfect for when you and a friend may only want a glass or so of wine each and don't want to open that standard 750 ml bottle. This smooth, full-bodied red blend from Niagara has seductive aromas of ripe, dark berries and plums. Hockey legend Wayne Gretzky donates his proceeds from every bottle sold to the Wayne Gretzky Foundation, which funds children's hockey programs across the country, builds rinks, and donates equipment. It's a wine that tastes good and does good for the community. You can find my favorite low and no alcohol wines, spirits, beers, cocktails, and mixed drinks at nataliemclean.com/low no. I'll also include a link in the show notes as well. I'll be posting reviews of these wines and their alcoholic versions on Instagram at Natalie McLean Wine. Connect with me there. I'd love to hear from you about your favorite low and no alcohol drinks. Speaking of delicious wines, 3 of you will win one of 3 bottles of the superb Benziger wines from California. This is open to Canadian residents only because shipping alcohol across borders is still bound up with prehistoric laws. I also still have 1 copy of Chris Rulin's terrific book, Press for Champagne, a guide to enjoying the world's greatest sparkling wine, to give away. This is open to everyone, no matter where you live. All you have to do is email me to let me know that you'd like to win. I'll choose the winner, as well as 3 winners of the wine, randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In other bookish news, if you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Way Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'd be happy to send you personally signed book plates for the copies you buy for yourself or to give as gifts. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at nataliemclean.com/321. The paperback usually arrives within a day or 2 of ordering. The ebook and audiobook are instantly available. Poof! Okay, on with the show. So before you rejoined the winery in 1993, the family insisted that you, like other members, had to go out in the world and work for 5 years so that you could bring something back to the winery. I think that is so great to avoid nepotism, or nepo babies they call it, or some sort of succession-like entitlement. But tell us about the program that besides that, when you came back, you had to go through a program called Flaming Hoops.
Yeah, that's what our nickname for it, because I had to jump through the flaming hoops my brothers were putting in front of me. But it makes perfect sense, and we formalized it because I was the youngest. I was like an early adopter of it, but we really formalized it with my nieces and nephews. And what it started off with, during high school, you have to do an internship over the summer. And every week you'd work in a different office, or a couple weeks, depending. You'd be in the vineyard, you'd be in the winery, you'd be up in accounting, you'd be in hospitality, in the wine lab, you'd see everything, right? And everybody's got different talents. You kind of say, oh, I really like being behind the tasting room. Oh, I love working outside. I'm really good with numbers. And we have all my nieces and nephews, 19 of them. We had one for everything, it seemed like. So that was the start. And then you have to go to college. And then after college, you had to go work in the field you were interested in for a minimum of 5 years and be a value add back to the winery, because we didn't have a spot for everybody. And not everybody wanted to get into the wine business, but we couldn't just simply, we're going to give you a job. Because that's the fastest way to failure. And particularly when you have a manager that's been doing it for, a decade, and all of a sudden some kid doesn't know anything, is his superior? No way. It's never a good scene. So they come in, and then when they come at the lowest rung and they work themselves up. And the best part is that person has so much more confidence, and they're not paranoid that I didn't earn this job. I got the job because of my last name. No, they realize they earned it despite their last name. It's kind of that way. We want to say, hey, your last name's Benziger, it means you got to work a little harder. You got to be an example. You're not given anything.
That's great, because there's horrifying statistics out of Harvard in terms of multi-generational family-owned businesses. So
Yeah, what is it? It's the first generation makes it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation spends it.
yeah, 82% or 88% of family businesses don't last to the third generation. That is scary, especially when all the pioneers have done so much work. But it hasn't been all sunshine skittles for you. Tell us what happened during the wildfires of 2017.
It was tragic. The saddest part was it was the rash of wildfires here in Sonoma County on October 10th. There was like 9 fires. We had hurricane force winds from the desert. They had a humidity of like 5%, which is incredibly dry. I remember stepping on a leaf that afternoon, and instead of the leaf going crunch, it shattered like glass. That's how dry it was. And I had been a volunteer fireman for 26 years out here. So I knew this was horrible, horrible fire danger. Red flag warnings, we call up here. Just waiting for a spark, right? Because it's October. It hasn't rained since the following April. So that night when the winds kicked in, it was just like, there's going to be a wicked fire. Just let's hope it's not here. And unfortunately, at about 10:30, my wife looks out the window. She goes, I smell smoke. And then she screamed, and I looked out, and there was this wall of fire coming right at us. I remember running outside. I was going to jump in my truck to see where the fire was, and already firebrands were falling in the yard. I was like, oh man, this is bad. We raced around, got my in-laws in their car, got the dogs, the cats, my kid's tarantula, and we took off. I stayed behind for a hot second to see if I could save the house or the neighbor's house. It was no way. I remember sitting there and with the wind buffeting, the smoke and the sounds, and in the distance you hear this whistling and then these big flashes of booms, propane tanks blowing up. I mean, it was so surreal. And I kept getting hit with sparks and firebrands. So I dove into my swimming pool for a brief second to get wet, running around. I'm like, oh my God, my swimming pool. So at the last second, I ran past where I had my wine cellar that I've been collecting my whole life. And I grabbed as many of my best bottles of wine and threw them into my swimming pool. And that's the only thing that survived.
Oh my gosh. So you came back and they had lived, so to speak, through the
Yeah, they
fire.
rolled down to the deep end, but then the pool cover melted and sunk on top of it. I couldn't get to them for about a month, but when I finally did, they didn't have labels anymore, but they were all the great bottles of wine that they were to begin with.
Oh, fantastic.
It was the one bright spot in a, no pun intended, in a fire story.
Yeah. Oh,
My
wow.
wife wasn't impressed because she was smart enough to leave the computer, her jewelry box, little safety box that had all our birth certificates right at the front door. And she said, don't forget this.
Oh.
And I did.
Oh.
And then I go, but remember that Bordeaux you really liked?
Yeah, let's open it now.
It's there at the bottom of the pool somewhere.
Oh my goodness. All right. So you have a few of your wines there to taste and to show us. Where would you like to start? Which one?
So let's start with the Sonoma County Chardonnay.
Okay, cool. That's
Excuse
great.
me. It's a California appellation now. We moved to a California one in 2020s because of the fire. This is a Monterey based, has a little bit of Caneros. I love this wine because of all the varieties. Chardonnay is the one variety that you could say is equally made in the vineyards and made at the winery. Most varietals are made in the vineyard and that's it. And the winemaker shepherds them through, don't screw up. But Chardonnay, you get a picking bin of Chardonnay at the crush pad, and it could be a beautiful, non-oaked, austere, minerally Chablis, which I love, or the big Butterkiss Butter Bomb, or anything in between. And what I love about this one, this is right at the middle of the teeter-totter. It's not austere and it's not overly oaked. It's got acidity and creaminess from growing in these areas that are very cool. And the fog comes in, and what it gives is what we call hang time. It gives an extra couple weeks of hang time, so the flavor continuum moves from green apple into that kind of white pear peach. We harvest at night because it's a thin skin varietal. We get back, and then it goes whole cluster right into the press, so we get that.
What
free
difference
run.
does that make, the whole cluster?
It just keeps the grape integrity. You're not every time you handle a Burgundian variety, you have the tendency to have the grape skins tear. And you don't want to do them during picking because then that stuff oxidizes and it can leave bitterness in the wine, particularly with Pinot Noir. It's critical. So we just throw the whole clusters in. Then we let the weight of the grape press it, and then we get that beautiful free run into the pan. And then we put that right into oak barrels. But these oak barrels come from Hungary. I love the Hungarian oak for a couple reasons. One, it's still made traditionally, where they cut the tree down, put it into what's called a rick. It's a pile of wood, and they let it sit there in the forest for 2 years, leaching out the wood tannins. And then the wood's sweet, and then they take that to French coopers and that into a traditional barrel. We let it age there. We do the surlies, the bâtonnage, the stirring.
Of the spent yeast cells, give it that creaminess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everything sounds better in French, right?
It does.
It'd rather be stirred or bâtonnage, right? And so we did that for about 8 months, and you get this beautiful, creamy Chardonnay. The non-oak people were like, okay, it's not in your face. And the people that enjoy oak will go, oh, okay, this has got a nice little bit of that creaminess that they're looking for. So it's a real crowd pleaser. I've had so much success, particularly in restaurants, is by the glass, because, if you have a limited thing, this is one of those Chardonnays that most people are going to be happy with.
And is this the Benziger Chardonnay or the Running Wild Chardonnay that you're talking about right now?
The Benziger California Chardonnay.
Okay, great. And what would you pair with it?
Oh, boy. I always think of lighter summer fares. So salads are dangerous because of salad dressing, but this could go with a fruit salad or Chinese chicken salad, which would be wonderful. Lighter fare, flakier white fishes, it would go great with. Pastas like an Alfredo, roast chicken. It's not a wuss, right? It's got good acidity.
No wussy wines.
Yeah. Is that okay to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, we're going to beep that.
Yeah. We want to have that. So this can pair. It doesn't have a ton of oak, so I wouldn't pair it with something too big. I would consider it light to medium body.
Awesome. Cool. And then you have another Chardonnay there?
Yeah, the Running Wild with the coolest label in the world.
Oh, can you show us that one?
Yeah.
All right, right up to the camera there. Oh, I see a cow and I see something on it. Is it the insect?
Butterflies.
That's butterflies. Oh,
so
lovely.
This is Daisy. She's one of my Highlanders.
Okay.
Daisy is one of the originals. She's still kicking. Actually, to be honest with her mom was Flower, and this is Daisy. So she was born on the ranch. She wasn't one of the originals. But anyway, it's called Running Wild because what I said earlier, we let nature run wild. So this is our whole adventure into sustainable growing, biodynamics, regenerative farming. So it's called Running Wild. And Daisy represents that with the butterflies to kind of have an image that strikes of a natural setting to make the wine in.
I love that.
The coolest part about this, Natalie, have you ever heard of the Piscinas?
No, it sounds like something to do with, is it a pool or is it the Pisces?
So it's an AVA. It's an AVA that's been around for a long time, but nobody knows about it.
No.
It's in San Benito County, which when you think of wine growing areas, it's not top of mind, but this is in the northwest corner of San Benito, touching Monterey. So it's Monterey adjacent. And this is right on the San Andreas Fault. It's called the Gambian Mountain Range. It's a coastal mountain range. And limestone and all sorts of other minerals have been working in there. This is right below what's called the Pinnacles, which is a limestone structure. California doesn't have a lot of limestone, but this place is it's woven into these vineyards here. And because it's in the northwest corner, it has a lot of the tendencies that Monterey does. So Burgundian varietals do extremely well here. It's like a little sink so that maritime fog settles in this area. So we grow really beautiful Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs, Sauvignon Blancs too, for that matter. There's not a lot of vineyards down there, but the vineyards that are there are epic. Williams-Salem has their Vista Verde vineyard, which makes some of their better wines. And then Calera has some vineyards there as well. I'm sure you're going to be hearing about the Piscinas in the future a lot more.
Well, now we know.
It's kind of getting rediscovered, if you will. It's like, remember Paso Robles, like 15 years ago, nobody knew about it?
True.
It's kind of like that. We love it.
Up and coming.
So with Running Wild, did here is I made this a little bit more in that Chablis style because I really love that style of wine. So we bring this up. What I want to make is a mineral, beautiful racy acidity and creaminess. So this goes full malolactic, right? So you're getting that gorgeous creaminess in there.
So that's the conversion of the harsher mallow acids to the softer lactic acids, just for those who might not be aware. But
Now, when
yeah,
you think of mallow means
mal
apple.
bad,
Yeah,
harsh.
is think of a green apple. When you bite into a green apple, it's like, whoa, that's pretty tart. And then malolactic, it's the acid that's in a glass of milk, much more tame.
Yes.
And then the byproduct that is what's called diacetyl, and that's the flavor of creamy, that buttery. So we love that. So I go through full malolactic, and then after 5 months, I take it out of the barrels and I put it into brand new, spanking new French oak barrels for 1 month. So what I love about this is you get these kind of almost honeyed pear aromas. It's the flavor I love, that creaminess that rolls across the tongue, and then this acidity that it cuts. So this wine you could kind of do as a double play wine. You could cocktail with it easily, but boy, with food, kind of similar to the Benziger Chardonnay, creamy pastas, roast chicken. Because of that acidity, it pairs really, really well with food.
My mouth is salivating as you're describing this, so
Yeah.
you're doing your
It's
job
nice.
there.
And this was a real passion project for me. This wine, I want it only to be kind of in restaurants. It doesn't even have a UPC code. That's the little jail bar thing you see on packaging. I really want this to be a special wine. Everything about it is personal, with Daisy on the label, this newly discovered vineyard area, and the quality of the wine. I really love how it turned out.
Sounds good. So we should ask for Daisy Benziger. Then we'll just say no, Running Wild from Benziger.
That's funny.
And you mentioned in association with this wine and perhaps others, regenerative farming. What is that? Is it beyond sustainable?
So biodynamic is regenerative farming,
Okay.
but biodynamic has some baggage to it because biodynamic was part of a cult called anthroposophy, and it can get a little nutty if you follow it to its endpoint. So regenerative biodynamic people are probably going to kill me now. Um, Regenerative farming takes the farming part of biodynamics, which is incredible, and just makes it what it really is, regenerative farming. Because organics is just the elimination of chemical inputs. What biodynamics does is replaces all that biological capital back into the soil so the land never goes fallow. It's constantly being fed back. Because remember, farming is resource intensive. Take, 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 take. We're just giving back. So there's a new trend that's called regenerative farming that doesn't quite have some of the baggage.
So you're not just going for zero sum or get back to neutral. You're trying to put back, give
Put
like,
back because we're a family business. I'd be
yeah.
a really
Yes.
father, grandfather, if I was leaving my property in a dilapidated state. So I have to leave the property. It's like the Boy Scouts here in America. Or whatever the sign is for camping. Leave it better than how you found it.
Yes. Good motto for life. Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Oh, terrific.
Now the last wine is our cab, the tribute.
Okay. Tribute.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've had this one. Well, I've had your Chardonnay as well, the Benziger. They're terrific, really amazing, and especially for the price points. But tell us about Tribute, and maybe, is there a story behind it?
Yeah, it's a big story. It's an emotional story for me. So as I said a couple times during the show, I'm the youngest. And with the youngest, time marches on, and my parents have passed away. I lost a brother, and you start to get really nostalgic because I'm the last man standing in my generation. Everybody's retired or passed on, and I got really nostalgic and a little sad about all these great memories, and they're not in the business anymore. But I wanted to share with my nieces and nephews growing up in the business. So I said, we're going to make a wine that's going to be a tribute to the family. And that's what this is. It's a tribute to my family.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a little hokey, but it means a lot to me. And also, it could not mean just my family. Whoever picks up a bottle of tribute, it could be a tribute to someone in their life. So
Absolutely.
it's something to kind of pay it forward, sort of.
Absolutely. The message is right there on and in the bottle because, as I say, it's a phenomenal wine, especially for the price.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Yeah.
I mean, it's great for everyday drinking because of the price. But, if you want to give a gift wine, graduation, anniversary, birthday, whatever, I mean, Tribute, it's right there.
It's the little engine that could, this wine. First of all, it's Paso fruit, which Paso is amazing because it's very warm down there. And in that flavor continuum, you move through that coffee, mocha, sour cherry notes, and Paso gets into this beautiful Bing cherry, blackberry, these really jammy flavors, which are awesome. This is one of the few wines that I only use American oak on. And only reason is because we did oak trials and the French oak just got run over. The American oak, and it's nice American oak, it's from the Ozark Plateau in Missouri. It stood up. It had a vanilla quality that when you pair it with the wild cherry, Bing cherry flavors, it's like an old fashioned cherry Coke. It's amazing. The
great.
aromas on this wine, it just keeps giving and giving and giving and giving. And the tannins are what I call furry tannins. They're not going to rip the enamel off your teeth and tie your tongue into a bowline. Yeah, it's not beautiful aromas, soft tannins, a wine that you can cocktail with, but also have with food. And this could, everything from a beautiful T-bone burger to a plate of pasta.
Wow, sounds good. And I love that you're verbizing cocktail. Let's cocktail with this wine, or let's cocktail with it.
Remember, I come from a boozy branch of the Benziger family.
And even though you're talking about cherry cola or whatever, those are the aromas. It's not actually a sweet wine. So if people are kind of listening to this, it's like, it's actually a dry wine, but it's got all these luscious fruit aromas that's just so ripe.
Today, with the trends of wine, they're getting sweeter and sweeter. This is a very serious, very dry wine. And the Chardonnays are too. They're below threshold.
Yeah. So even when we say butterscotch or buttery or whatever,
yeah.
it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a good thing because sometimes people want to laugh, but people don't get it. When you're constantly saying it has cherry and they're like, where do you put the cherries in?
Right.
Because you always talk that way.
I used to think that.
When you hear yourself, you're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I would probably ask that question too if I wasn't living in the business,
Or how can something be dry and mouthwatering at the same time? It's like, it's because it's fermented to dryness, no sugar, but it's making your mouth water. Oh my gosh, those sound amazing. I think for just the Benziger and the tribute, because the Running Wild is in restaurants, so it's a nice treat to have when you're out and about, and restaurants, the pricing will be all over the place. But for the two, I think, is it around $19.95 Canadian?
Yeah, you got it. It is right around there. And January 18th, I think they're going to have a release. Or Daniel, my guy up in Canada, said they'll be available January 18th, and you nailed the pricing.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure this podcast comes out right in time. We'll whet their appetite. I guess, too, when you talk about tribute and your family label, Benziger, you are a family brand, a story brand. I mean, we see so many critter brands and concept brands that are developed by market research or focus groups or whatever. What does it mean to you to be a family brand or a story brand?
I call those whiteboard wines.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And the family thing is, and this is the thing I can't believe that my dad did, is he sold his business, the house, in that Roman tradition. He burned the boats. He wasn't going backwards. And that courage just is amazing to me now as I'm his age now. And I'm like, would I have the guts to do that? I don't think so. And the other thing with family was we all leaned on each other, right? We could get into wicked fights, and we did, being 5 boys, we had a lot of fist fights, but at the end, we always hugged and we always ate together. There was never any of these simmering battles. And unfortunately, the wine business is rife with these family feuds. And for us, it hasn't been that way at all. We've always, at the end of the day, liked to hang out with each other. I'm having our Christmas party over here at my house, and I'm going to have 45, 50 family members, and it's going to be a blast.
That's awesome. Wow. Sounds like the Waltons or something.
And that's
a little bit more rough and tumble.
Yeah, they're there through thick and thin. And also, it's like they're not going to call in sick. I love all my employees, but it's just that they have that vested interest.
Sure. It's a calling. It's not just a job.
And I love it to see it in the next generation, like my niece, Jamie
Benziger,
who's a winemaker at Imagery at 38 years old. It's just so impressive, International Woman Winemaker of the Year, best 40 under 40, and she's not a diva yet.
I'll have to talk to her next.
Oh yeah, you would love her. She's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds amazing. All right, let's do a lightning round, just quick questions, short answers. In the
Okay.
museum of Chris Benziger, what 3 objects would be in the central display?
The ranch, the property, that would be
Okay.
number one because that's
This is a big museum. Okay.
yeah, this big
Yes.
museum, right? That's where my soul is. Second, it would be my home garden because when I was a very little kid, I knew I was going to do something with plants. Just took me another 25 years to figure out it was going to be grapes.
That's great.
The first time I ever put a seed in the ground and watched it grow, I was amazed that just water and sunshine and that's it. And the garden is with family and everything like that. Just that still sinking your hands into that warm dirt, watching stuff grow is just still amazes me to this day. And then lastly, the dinner table. Everything in my family, we've settled around the dinner table. And my mom would cook these meals. She used to cook for all the employees too. She cooked lunch for everybody.
Like 100 employees or so?
Yeah, hot and a lot, we used to call it.
That's
And
amazing.
she loved it. She loved to do that. So from biggest, the ranch, to the garden, to the dinner table.
Ah, I love that. I love that. Those nesting dolls back again. Um, do you have a favorite childhood food that you remember, and what would you pair with it today as an adult?
New York pizza,
Ooh, okay.
a slice of pie, baby. Yeah, and then for me, I find Pinot is amazing with pizza.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought a bigger red, but
Yeah, particularly if you're putting a little sausage on there, little sausage and peppers. Yikes, so good.
yikes. It's a good tasting note. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone outside of the wine industry, who would that be, living or dead?
Okay, so I know he's not that popular right now, but this is purely on the wine side. Thomas Jefferson, because he was the first real wine enthusiast in America, and we went to France. And I would love to show him our vineyard today and say, "What do you think, Tom? What do you think? Hey, you impressed?" And I just read that book.
Jefferson. There's a couple of books about him. And
It's actually the one about the wine thief, Billionaire's
okay.
Vinegar.
Yes, yeah, Benjamin Wallace. Yes.
Yeah, and
Oh, the fake bottle of Jefferson wine that
yeah,
people paid
it got me into
tens of
it. And I read
thousands.
up about his whole 1805 trip through France looking for wine. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, I think he was sneaking back cuttings from Bordeaux and planting them in the Monticello.
Yeah, him and its Scuppernong.
That is great. Oh my goodness, what great stories. Has there been anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention as we wrap up, Chris?
Not off the top of my head. I know you're a pro,
Thank you.
but I've done my fair share of interviews as well. And this is one of the more in-depth, insightful ones I've done. You've asked all the right questions.
Thank you.
Besides just like, what's the state of the wine business,
How you feeling about this year's vintage?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love the stories because, as you say, you're a story brand. I think anybody who's really deep into this, it's the people and the stories that bring alive the actual wine.
And every bottle of wine, every label is a story.
It's a story.
It's like a book.
It is.
A liquid book, if you will. And there's so much to tell.
Absolutely.
And we forget that we're farmers first and foremost.
Yeah.
That's always kind of, it's all the winemaker. Yes, the winemaker is very important, but the grower, because you're never going to make great wine without great grapes. It just does not work any other way.
Absolutely. And I'm a writer on the agricultural beat, trying to dig out those farmer stories.
Yeah. Well, I hope to see you live one day soon.
Absolutely. We must do this over a real glass or 3 of those wines.
Next time you're going to be out west.
Yeah, either the Vancouver Playhouse, I got to get there, or else the one of the California Wine Fair events.
Yeah, would love to show you around,
Yeah.
kick the dirt clods as you will, and just see.
Yes. Visit the ranch. Absolutely.
It'll be in your top 10 most beautiful wineries you'll ever, and I'll stake my reputation on that.
Well, you made it sound beautiful, like a mini paradise. So yeah, I would love to visit.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Chris. And of course, we can find your wines across Canada. The stocks vary, but just check your local liquor store. Also, you can come to my site because I review all of the wines, and I always put links to all of the liquor stores for each review. So folks can find them that way too. And of course, we have listeners outside of Canada. Your wines are widely available in the US and in many other countries. So thank you so much. Really appreciate this time. You actually have been one of the most eloquent of winemakers that I've talked to. I love your stories. So thank you.
The feeling is mutual. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Chris. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, why is Chardonnay the one grape that is equally made in the vineyards and winery? Chris observes that most varietal wines, those made from one grape, are made in the vineyard. The winemaker shepherds them through and tries not to screw it up. But with Chardonnay, you can choose whether it's going to be a beautiful unoaked, austere, minerally Chablis style, i.e. Northern Burgundy, or a big butter kiss, as you say, butter bomb, or anything in between. The Benziger Chardonnay is right in the middle of that teeter-totter. It's not austere and not overly oaked. It's got acidity and creaminess from growing in regions that are very cool. When the fog comes in, it gives an extra couple of weeks of hang time for the grapes on the vine. So the flavor continuum continues to move from green apple into white pear and peach. It's a real crowd pleaser. Number 2, what's the difference between biodynamic and regenerative farming? Chris explains that biodynamic has some baggage to it, with its associations with farming according to moon phases and other aspects. Regenerative farming takes the farming part of biodynamics, which is incredible, and applies it. Organic farming is simply the elimination of chemical inputs. All it does is replace all the biological capital back into the soil, so the land never really goes fallow. It's constantly being fed back. Farming is resource intensive. Regenerative farming means giving back to the land, so it is not just simply restored, it's better than before the farming started. And number 3, what does it mean to be part of a family brand of wine? Chris calls critter brands and concept brands that are developed by market research whiteboard wines. I gotta love that term. A family brand is inherently tied to a family and its name. Chris notes that his father burned the boats in the Roman tradition, so to speak, when he sold his business and uprooted his family in New York and traveled 3,000 miles away to start a winery. In developing the winery, all they had was each other and had to lean on each other through all the challenges from tough finances to wildfires. But they stayed together, and as Chris notes, he was hosting Christmas dinner this year with 50 family members. Whoa. In the show notes, you'll find a full transcript of my conversation with Chris, links to his winery and wines, the video versions of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live, and where you can order my book online now, no matter where you live. If you missed episode 236, go back and take a listen. I chat about the historic Paris tasting that changed the fate of California wines with Mark Gudgel, author of The Rise of Napa Valley Wineries. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
What happened in France in 1976 is that the walls surrounding the mythology of superior French terroir were razed to the ground. And it was then reinforced time and time again that world-class wine is made all around the world, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Chile, in South Africa, in the United States. Prior to that, there was very little export market for anything that wasn't French. And the reason that today you can buy an Argentine Malbec in the grocery store is because of this tasting in 1976.
Wow, I didn't realize it was so pivotal, but when you put it in that sort of context, I can see how its ramifications spread. What was so amazing was that these wines were tasted blind. No one knew the identity of the wines, and they were judged by French experts. It was the French experts saying, California at the top. You won't want to miss next week when we chat with Konstantinos Lazarakis, the first person in Greece to have passed the notoriously difficult Master of Wine exams. He is the author of Wines of Greece and will join us from his home in Piraeus, Greece. If you liked this episode or learned even one teensy tiny thing from it, please email or tell one friend about the podcast this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in learning more about California wines, particularly those from the cool climate of Sonoma, like the Benziger family. By helping me grow this podcast, you also encourage me to keep going with it. I need your support in this way. It's easy to find my podcast. Just tell them to search for Natalie McLean Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to the show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or if you'd like to win a copy of Chris's champagne book, or one of 3 bottles of the Benziger wines, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, too, about this episode. Were you surprised about what it takes to farm biodynamically? Have you tried biodynamic wines? Email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to take a free online wine and food pairing class with me called The 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemclean.com/class. That's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/321. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a delicious Benziger Chardonnay or Cabernet.
You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.